Laura, how's it going?
Hi, Mitch.
Thank you, caller.
So happy to be here.
Talk to us about Luminous Effects. How did that come to be?
So Luminous Effects came about because I needed a way to pay my benefits to local ones so I could get health insurance, honestly. And it's really the greatest loophole I ever created for myself because it forced me to brand myself and my work. And I managed to pick a name that carried me through my lighting career into video and pixels. So that was a stroke of luck, totally driven by a necessity to figure out how to be a stagehand in New York City and work within the union system when I got my local one card. Yeah.
Quite excellent. So screens. We got screens everywhere.
Got screens, mad screens.
So as screens are getting bigger and more prevalent everywhere, how are you helping people or clients manage or design or come up with these big shows?
So to me, it's kind of a history lesson. So if you guys will bear with me and gals, I was programming media servers starting with Catalyst and Mbox and Hippo back when I would show up by myself with a box, some stock content, maybe some Versatubes or very low res LED on the stage, and make pretty. And that's how I built my video programming chops. So over the years, as screens have gotten better resolution, you see the progression of screens usage in a set go from 20% kind of accent usage of those screens to 80% of the scenic surface. It really became impossible or unwieldy for one person to manage not only all the information that had to get to those screens, but the process of building unique content rather than using stock content for those screens, and then working with the engineering team on the amount of signals that had to get to the processors driving those screens. So for me to sit in that one position and receive well-prepared, thought-out deliverables and be able to program them in time for a show really became me looking for a way to dummy-proof the process. So I, over the years, especially working with Univision on a lot of their large events, because there were so many screens there, refined a workflow that allowed me to set the content teams on a path to deliver repeatable files to a structure that I defined and be able to program it quickly and get the files across signal paths to the engineering team that were well planned and executed. So to me, it's been about communication. It's about learning the language and the tools of the content teams. And as I've stepped away from programming, continuing to refine everyone's workflow so they're using their tool sets to the most efficient power possible.
Excellent. So Laura's pretty good at, when we're on a show together, she'll say, it's in the Google Doc. Everything.
Yes. Everybody love your Google Docs.
Yes. So communication, keeping all these things. You have you're pretty famous for your special sites that you put up, where you put everything all in one space.
Yep. Every show gets a custom-built website that's based on WordPress that is a content management system for all this information that I need to convey to the different teams.
So she has like a website that we go to, and it has all the signal paths, the diagrams, WebGL, 3D models, so you can fly and zoom around. So all these shows here all start out as a website, and everyone kind of steps their way through this.
Here's an example of documentation where I'm explaining, in a scenic environment with 80 screens, just identifying what all the screen surfaces are for everyone is part of the challenge, so that as a content creator, this pixel that you're painting is going to land where you need it to on a set. So yes, Google Docs are an important tool to that. WebGL for 3D information is important to that, and even Illustrator for images.
As we go forward, what do you see, like virtual VR, AR situation? How does that come into play?
Well, I did my first D3 VR project this fall, which was pretty exciting because while I've been a big proponent of sharing 3D models through a web browser, to me the next step is understanding how you can share that experience of understanding the dimensional nature of your scenic environment, not just via the web, but via VR. So there are a couple of ways to do this. One of the WebGL tools I use is Sketchfab, and they have Google their headset, the cardboard. Google Cardboard embedded right in their platform. I know of other WebGL platforms that allow for video playback are also going to start utilizing, single button click VR tools. But to be sitting with a client and be able to take them through a VR experience where they get to see video playing back on their set, moving screens, walking around through a scenic environment, being able to experience this before we're actually building out this screen structure in a space, I think is a huge light bulb moment, and I'm pretty excited about where this is going to take us, because the more we can learn, I think the better the experience for everyone when we get on site. If we can learn what it feels like to be in the space with those screens before it's built, I think the process just gets cleaner, and we don't have to deal with that dreaded, I didn't know it was going to look like this when we get on site, which is like the thing that makes me cringe every time I hear it.
Absolutely. So you were talking about media service before, like we had stock content. We've kind of like gone from 0 to 60 pretty quick. So it's like taking the clients to the process when you're trying to sell a show, or we were using inbox stock content a while ago, and now we're like crazy detailed, specific moments, and we're talking about canvases that are huge. I guess, do you have any comments on?
Well, it's a bit of a trick, right? Because, I've gotten on pitch calls with a producer when they finally understand why some other set designer or producer asked them to speak with me about doing a project, and we'll get 10 minutes into the call and they'll realize that I'm some role that they didn't realize they were talking about, and they're like, oh, I just hired a guy with a box and I've got my screens covered with stuff. There's certainly client education that needs to happen, where we need to raise the standard of video for a lot of clients. I mean, certainly if stock content is all they need visually, great. They should have a guy with a box. But if they want to take their scenic environment where they've poured all this money and time and resources into high quality LED or projection surfaces, I feel like it's my goal to take them through the process of learning what custom content can do for them the show, put them on a timeline where that can be realized, help them understand where their money is going with pre-visualization, and then hopefully from there start introducing them to evolving that even farther with our real-time generative tool sets, where they can plan those pictures ahead of time and then make impactful changes while we're in the room together, continuing development.
Yeah.
So it's still a problem.
Yeah, it's still a problem. We're just problem solvers.
What else should we talk about, Mitch?
Well, let's see.
Should we talk about when we met?
Where
do you remember? I think it was Stand Up to Cancer in 2011.
It was Stand Up to Cancer. Oh my God. Yeah. That was painful.
Mitch was a young pup.
I was a young pup once.
And I had a family emergency and had to leave. And I had some crazy idea that I was going to mask out this wall. And
it was like a ribbed.
Yeah.
They went all the way up. It was like a 60-foot thing, and every 8 inches was like a rib. And she's like, I want to just project just on the ribs not on the inside. But I wanted the option to maybe do it on the inside. So can you do it both ways? Is that possible?
And I kind of left him with this saying, I got to run back to my hometown for a couple of days. I was thinking about doing this. Do you have some time to maybe look at it? Of course, saying this very casually, like, I don't know, this could be an interesting thing. You want to give it a shot? Which, of course, young Mitch said, oh, God, I have to do this thing.
Just like that?
Just like, well, your eyes said it, not, I didn't hear it verbally. I just saw it in your eyes.
Yes.
Yeah. But you actually pulled it off. And I was thinking about it this morning, about this chat and like where we met. And I was realizing if somebody asked me to do that today, I'd kind of tell them to fuck off probably. But yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I believe I took my iPad and remoted in and was like drawing in Photoshop full screen.
Yeah.
It was not pretty. We've come a long way. We've come a long way.
Yeah, because I think if I asked you for that now, you'd look at me and say, no.
No.
Yeah. So I'm glad I met him young, ladies and gentlemen.
So
okay.
So what projects have you worked on this year?
So my main market is the award show broadcast market. I just came off the CMA Awards. Chris Peterson's fantastic team was there with me, and I had Zach Alexander engineering a D3 system from VER. And so that broadcast about a week and a half ago, live on ABC, and we just put their Christmas show in the bank that'll broadcast in a couple of weeks. Prior to that, we were at the VMAs together.
Yeah.
Went really well. I had this Nike project where I did the D3 VR. And I spent the summer doing kind of like personal development projects. I try and go to SIGGRAPH at least for a day every year. That's been kind of an exciting addition to my journey, learning about graphics and content and where VR's going, because I'm pretty excited about the use of VR in our industry. I will say the one takeaway I had from SIGGRAPH, if anybody knows about this conference, it's been around since the 80s. It's the Computer Graphics Conference. What I found really interesting is the filmmaker community is really driving the VR discussion, and I think it's the wrong group of people to be talking about it. It should be live entertainment people, because we understand space, and when you take a filmmaker and put them in a VR environment, they think about a frame, and we are natural spatial thinkers, especially those of us who have theatrical backgrounds. So please, everyone, pay attention to VR. The wrong people are driving this discussion.
Yes, the video game people certainly drove the hardware to get there, but now the theater people need to come in.
We need to tell the stories in VR. And the other conference I went to this summer is the I.O. Festival. It's held in Minneapolis every year, and it's a creative coding conference, and there are usually a lot of great artists there, and it's really good brain food.
Yeah, really, to do any of this video stuff, it's such a collaboration between the creative team and the technical team, because when people talk about doing crazy, like 16,000 pixels wide canvases anymore, that's like exponentially harder with routing and hardware, and I mean, you have to know a lot about a lot to do video. It's a
How do you
burden.
keep yourself up to date on the hardware?
We do, well, VR is a fantastic place because we have so much stuff that comes through all the time. Matt Waters and all of our team, they keep like the best gear always available. JP and Josh and everybody here, the LED team, like it's very like lock and step. We have a lot of discussions about color and how to make this LED be exactly the blue you want it to be.
Yep.
And so everyone works hard. So we all have to learn about how we're doing. We also have to know, all this high tech stuff. It's great. It's a good environment to be a VR together. I'm just talk more high pitch. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
We're getting technical notes while we're talking here, folks, so bear with us.
Yeah. So what? Oh yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
What's your workflow like? Is it mostly 1920? Are you kind of blowing everything on 4K and splitting it out to B3, or what do you?
So my workflow, my goal is to unwrap a set. I usually start with a 3D model of a set from the set designer, take it apart and try and think about it from the perspective of the content team. I also try and understand what my programmer is going to need to do operationally to paint that set when we're live writing cues, and what the engineering team needs on the signal flow. So there's like 3 seats that I really care about: creative, operations, and engineering is how I like to think about it. So on the creative side, me and my team, we've really moved toward a single file deliverable. And it's usually restricted to whatever our broadcast limitations are. So if it's a 720p broadcast or 1080, that becomes our vertical height. We are happily delivering up to half the needed pixels of a screen, because this screen, if it's 20 feet upstage of me with the current cameras, if I were still shooting HD, I don't need every pixel there for content. I just need the pixels there to fill in the negative space behind that speaker. So for the CMA's example, 720p broadcast, our background screen behind the speaker was 1,500 pixels tall. We delivered 720. Looked absolutely fine. So looking for ways to optimize the deliverable for both render time and simplicity in programming. We put all the screens on one raster, and if we can make the raster a reasonable enough size, content teams are happy to just spit out that one raster even for the most minor update. It makes everyone's content tracking simplified, because we're only looking for one file per song, per speaker event. So that gets easier. And then using the different server tool sets we have, we take apart that single deliverable and spit out whatever screens we need out of whatever output. So our workflow divorces signal flow from content delivery, which I think makes things really efficient. And that way I can work with the the engineering team on the screens at any point later in the discussion. I used to be limited, say 5 years ago, I'd have to finalize my content workflow with the engineering team so that my deliverables resembled my signal flow as much as possible. That doesn't exist for us anymore. So yeah, that helps us a lot. And so, we're even on site now making changes to the signal output configuration because we have that flexibility in our servers now. So workflow is very important to me. I feel like if you're a good leader to the 3 teams that I am responsible for, and everyone feels supported in that process, when the shit hits the fan at my end of the spectrum and we're like live in rehearsal, we've created enough goodwill because we've been supporting my team's been supporting everyone's process through the whole month leading up to the show, that then we get supported in the fire of trying to get cues written, making mad changes last minute when we're in her rehearsal on camera and have maybe 45 minutes or an hour to spend with a performance getting the look right.
Yeah, definitely when we, does that answer your question? Okay. We've definitely been in the fire a few times on a few shows. We've been through
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But no, if everything's not completely organized or all in a well thought out and organized, put together, where's Tim Noss? He's always very well organized and thought out. If it's not all well, it'll go to shit so quick. So especially when it's a live broadcast or anything, everything has to be 100% of the time. At least when we're not in commercial break, because then we can be not 100%. But yeah, anybody? Okay, all right.
Anyone else?
What's going on, Dave Perkins?
It looks like technology is getting us to the place where we can actually see the entire show in this. Would you see that as a help or a hindrance at a point in time? Are you going to be ready? Is your content ready? Or is it just going to stop the whole thing in its tracks because you're going to be combining teams maybe too early or maybe at the right time?
So where previs comes into the process, I have a couple of thoughts about that. So when I started doing the WebGL, I was trying to make the move from being an asset to the lighting designer to being an asset to the scenic designer. So I went to a few scenic designers showing them, look, you can see your model in Chrome and you can email it to somebody and they can have this really great experience. And people will get so excited about the communication and shareability of that kind of tool. And then I'd see the light go out in their eyes as they realized, oh, I'm going to start getting notes like a month out and have to change my set. So there is a liability. There is a trend in the industry I'm seeing right now, and I don't like it, and that's, creative decisions are getting delayed later and later into our broadcast process, with this idea that, we, the holders of the computer technology, are highly flexible and can respond quickly.
Which we try to do.
Which we try to do. And we're heroic and mercenaries and love a challenge and tend to succeed, and we're doing it at the expense of our health and sanity. I don't get to do a lot of previs as much as maybe I was even trying to do 2 or 3 years ago, because I can't get content decided on time to get rendered early enough for me to be able to share it on a web-based platform, even to render out a movie from some other 3D platform and share it that way. So it started to move that way, that I feel like, these WebGL tools I were using were really going to be useful, and now it's like slid backwards. So I have some thoughts for my creative directors and my producers about this decision-making process that I feel like yes, we want to serve the creative teams of the performers who are on our shows, the creatives of the award shows and other performance environments themselves, but the decision-making process has gotten really muddy, and so I'm not able to take advantage of those previs tools the way I'd like to. And I would like to have the problem that people are seeing things too early and going, that sucks, let's change it all, and putting people to work and doing
Instead of
work.
right before the show.
Instead of right
sucks,
before,
let's change it all.
I didn't know it was going to look like that.
I didn't know it was going to look like that. Let's see. Anybody else? Anybody? Nothing? What's up?
When designing for a show like the CMAs or the opening ceremony for the Olympics, how much is custom for that one show, or how much is stock that you guys use for multiple shows?
I'd say at this point, nearly 100% of my shows are custom content. I'm also on a server platform typically that doesn't have any stock content that ships with it. So, it's almost on purpose. I've done kind of hybrid shows where, a show can't really afford custom content, but they want to look unique. And, we do like a hybrid where I call it like custom stock, where, we'll go shopping for them at iStock and quickly scrub through a couple of clips we find that maybe suit the show well. But that happens maybe 1 or 2 shows a year. Almost everything's custom content now, which is exciting to see because these shows have been developing custom looks for their broadcast graphics package since their inception. It's only natural they would want to be custom decorated or designed for their scenic environment as well. Yep.
Yeah, the LED's kind of so integrated with the sets on almost everything now that custom is really the only way to really make it look like a real thing. The VMAs especially was a beautiful set, but the LED was so integrated everywhere.
Yep, and we had some nice non-rectangular projection surfaces and a really beautiful custom host look from the broadcast package team, Elastic.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Anything else we should discuss on your list? We got a lot of time here, baby.
Do you have any suggestions to production designers or video designers for this year? What should they go attend? Should they go attend certain conferences? Well, you talked about SIGGRAPH and some other things, but what's some advice you would give to some up-and-coming screens producer type people?
Well, we definitely, one of my goals, my personal soapboxes is, screens producing as a discipline needs to be recognized on more shows. I see that happening. As I was describing historically, this used to be the domain of 1 to 2 people managing servers and operations and content organization. I don't go into a show with less than 3 other people now because, I really see this as a team. I think it's important for one person on that team to not be, behind the technology, to really be available to the lighting designer, to the set designer, and the producers of the show to really discuss and engage about how those screens are looking, and at least in my usage on camera for broadcast. There are certainly shows that can get by with a programmer and a server and make a show, but I really want to see more shows evolve into understanding that it you look at the teams for the lighting design team. They're building live in the room. We're building live in the room. We need support. So that as a piece shows bringing on a screens producer to work in concert with lighting and scenic designers to develop the show is important to me. And also to see the video team as a group, whether it's the screens engineering team, the front of house operations team, with the camera truck team, that we become more integrated. We're our own little fiefdoms now, and sometimes we don't even overlap with each other, even though we're all handling the signal flow.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that kind of integration.
It's a pretty big responsibility-wise, because especially with film trucks, everything has to be gen-locked and synced together. Otherwise, you're going to see things in the video that you don't want to see. So it takes you have to be a lot about a lot to do.
You do.
Video. It's a heavy burden to be a video person.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anybody else? Anybody?
I have a question.
Hey.
The scale of what you guys do is awe-inspiring. It's huge. I admire it. I do small-scale video mapping, 1-2 projectors, nothing big. I'm doing more for art installations for museums, restaurants, where they want a standalone system. Do you have a company or a direction you recommend to look into that for research? Standalone video content delivering projection systems.
Right, so you're looking for like a playback device that you can, for installation?
Ideally, something you could update as well through a local server or
Yep.
some sort of a wireless communication.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of digital signage hardware.
Yeah.
It's pretty legit.
Have you checked out the Stempful booth, the Austrian
Yeah.
company? There's some new boxes, networkable boxes that I think are worth checking out. Stempful. Yeah, STUMPFL, I think. Yeah.
Hashtag Stumful.
Hashtag.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Zach, what are you excited about for the future? Zach, not Zach, Mitch, sorry. I need a nap.
There are about 10,000 Zachs
think-
that
yeah,
are video
yeah.
engineers, so I'm not going to give you a pass on that.
Thank you.
So what about generative? What about real-time generative content?
Yes.
What do you want to? What's the new exciting thing that's coming out?
Well, now we have a couple of hardware platforms out where we can do this, both the GX2 and the Montaigne Plus. So we've seen the hardware companies respond to everyone's excitement about generative content, which I think is really incredible. They've been able to do that so quickly. I think it's also important that we, as the people who have to execute shows with generative content, have a clear message to the people that hire us that that generative content doesn't mean it can be done quickly. Just because it's rendered in real time doesn't make it happen any faster than making any other content.
I mean, it's going to happen quickly, but it takes a minute to get there.
Yes, so when discussing generative content Notch with your clients, please remind them it is like any other video content creation tool. We need time and people to put these projects together.
With great rendering power comes great rendering responsibility.
Great responsibility and better budgets, please.
Yes.
Yes.
What have you used Notch on any shows recently, or any real-time generative? Any live television stuff?
Yeah, well, I participated in setting up the workflow for the Shakira tour. That had a lot of Notch on it. There was no one named Zach on that project. Yeah, it's come up a lot lately. Yeah, I had a show recently where a creative director asked me for Notch, and the project was going live in 36 hours, and I had to say, I didn't say no
Call JT
outright.
Rooney. That's what you said.
He tried to help me. I had to say, well, you can't say no. None of us ever want to say no. I said yes if I get 2 Notch artists, some GX2s that are not part of the rest of the show system, and we'll take care of it like that, because I tried to list the barriers to be successful without saying no, so that we could be responsible about how we were approaching this technology. And I think that's great power.
Laura, from a budgetary standpoint, I think a lot of people often forget about the cost of the content. Can you speak to roughly what that relationship is usually between hardware costs versus content costs?
There are layers of struggles when it comes to budget, I find, because I'm trying to expand the team on existing shows. What was done last year when the set was 20% screens, a producer doesn't necessarily clock that the set is now 80% screen, and that's going to have a relational increase to content production. So there's usually conversation there. Also adding more people. Why does it take so many more people to do the show last year that was done with 1? And then as far as like content budgets, sometimes I'm just told a number and what I have to produce, and then I have to come back and say, for this number, I think we can do 4 custom looks, and the rest have to be done with stock. It is at least for my position as screens producer, because often I'm brought in as a technical advisory and creative editor role, and not necessarily the source creative for those images. I'm often just told what the numbers are, but I can at least try and speak intelligently to what I think they can achieve with those numbers for the amount of pixel deliverables and render time it's going to take. We often joke about Avatar being the point of reference for cost. I'm like, do you want South Park or do you want Avatar? And let's go from there.
Excellent.
I just wanted to say that there is a lot of create extraordinary that goes on with our company and with that, and I just little cheers, because I've seen a lot of the stuff with VMAs and salute.
Cheers. Cheers.
It's LDI, right?
It's LDI.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
All right. I think we're good.
Yeah.
Are we good? Are you good?
I'm good, Mitch.
You're going to pay for that later in a
So
not so
paying
subtle
for that.
way.
I know.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. I'm going to turn this back to Matt because I'm going to say goodbye.
Thanks, everyone,
Thank you very
for
much for
hanging
coming
around.
by.